All righty, folks, welcome. I am Heather Pierce Campbell, the legal website warrior. Welcome to another episode of Guts, Grit, and Great Business. I am super excited for this conversation today. We are way overdue for this conversation. And for those of you that have this on your list for this year, you are in for a treat. My guest today is Gert Mellak. And Gert, I should have asked you, how do you pronounce your last name?
Mellak is perfect.
Well, okay, good. I'm so glad I didn't flub that. For those of you that don't know Gert, Gert is the founder and CEO of SEOleverage.com, an SEO platform that helps course creators, coaches, and e-commerce sites grow their SEO in a conversion-focused way. Gert is also the author of the book, The Erica Framework, where he describes his way of approaching SEO a bit differently than a usual agency would do. Implementing this methodology together with the SEO Leverage platform has led to clients sticking to this program for years while consistently improving their results. Gert, welcome.
Thank you so much, Heather. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I so appreciate you. I know you've had to give me a little flexibility because we had this scheduled, I think, last year and then had to bump it, probably, if I were to guess, because it feels like all of the final quarter of last year I spent either sick or my kids being sick.
It sounds familiar. Yeah, sounds
I
familiar.
know. I felt like I was back in newborn baby days. No
Right.
sleep, up all through the nights. Anyways, it was a wild ride,
Never
but
stops.
it never stops. I know. Well, I'm hoping it does. Like my daughter is 5 now, so I'm hoping that we're on the bubble of her turning into a better sleeper. Um, Anyways, I'm super excited to kick off. We're recording this right, shortly after the new year. This is actually my first podcast recording for the new year. So it's a super important topic and one that I personally look forward to learning more about as well through this conversation. For folks that don't know you, I know you and I were introduced through James Framco, right? Who his episode will be coming out here in the next little bit. But for folks that don't know your background, kind of your path into entrepreneurship, will you share a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. So I'm originally from Austria in Europe. Landed in Spain based on based on my wife. Have been living here and working here for quite a few years already. And
Mm.
yeah, I come from a technical background, so I did study my IT programming skills, assembled computers, these kinds of stuff. I got into web design, got into designing websites and finding out nobody came to visit them. And then just started looking into ways how I actually drive traffic to the website. Initially, it
Mm.
was just traffic wherever it came from, but we very quickly figured out that it's really about relevant traffic, people who actually need this right now or want to find out something and get exposed to your brand. So we very quickly, I think, came into segmenting the traffic and really looking for those visitors that actually can drive the business forward. So I did everything in digital marketing, I think you can imagine, from social ads to Facebook to Instagram to YouTube, whatever you want to name. Ultimately, we landed in search marketing in general. We still do some Google ads, but first and foremost, we specialized in SEO and search engine optimization, where it's really about making sure that Google understands that your website in a certain
Mhm.
context is one of the best choices on the net.
Mm. So first of all, a couple things that I love about your journey. One is that you started building websites. I mean, I don't love this part for you, but then realizing like, oh, nobody's coming. Like you don't build a website and people just automatically show up, right? And I
Right.
think that people sometimes, have what should we call them? False aspirations around how
Mhm.
that's going to go when they complete a new website build out.
Absolutely. I have a funny story here. I asked the client once, they came in and said, yeah, we already have a website. We're talking 15 years ago. So this was in Spain, this was quite a thing.
Mm.
So they said, yeah, I had a website and I was asking them this, does it work for you? And he just opened up his browser and opened up his website and said, yeah, look, it's working, right? But I was like, yeah, does it work for you, right? I can see it working and this would be the basis, like the car brings you from dot A to dot B. But is it working for you? And hey, yeah, how do you mean this, right? So, and when we got into conversions, do people actually do what you expect them to do? Do they call you based on what they see? Do they inquire more information? Do they download something, etc.? And it's just for many companies still today opens a completely new world where they say, okay, they still have this mindset, especially if they're like 50, 60, maybe business owners have had their fair share of experience, but not necessarily digitally. They still have this mindset of exposure equals more sales. Just that
Mm,
today we are exposed to thousands and thousands of ads every day, where it really doesn't matter so much unless it is they're really catching our attention at the right moment.
that's
And
right.
this is where SEO really comes in.
Well, and I imagine the SE because you think about the steps in that process, right? And I love your focus on conversion. Like, is it actually working? Because I think lots of people can set up and run ads and do that kind of stuff, but if they are not helping you figure out that whole conversion equation, you can waste so much money doing that. And I know plenty of people who have thrown a lot of money at that problem, right? So when you talk about SEO conversion, like that's still, there's a lot that happens
Mhm.
within that, right? Do
Right.
you do all of it? Do you focus on a piece of it? Like where my mind is going is like, do you have the right message to begin with? Are you
Mhm.
using the right messaging and language to speak to your people in the right way, right?
Mhm.
What parts of that equation do you look at? Do you support your
Yeah,
clients
it's
with?
definitely this is definitely one part. So if a conversion actually just means do they do what I want them to do, right? So very often
Mm,
people have in conversion, they have in mind, do they fill in the contact form? Do they download
mhm,
something and give me their email address? Do they buy something in an e-commerce store? This is would be what we very often call hard conversions, right? But there are also soft conversions. Are people actually clicking on the contact page? Do they want to know where you are
mm,
located? Do they click on your results page or testimonials, right? How engaged is this traffic? So what we do very often is that we define both hard conversions but also soft conversions to figure out what is happening on the site. What does the traffic do? We send traffic to the site, we send visitors
mm,
your way, but we want to know where do they come in when they react the best. Or on the flip
mm,
side, those users that actually do what we want them to do, where do they come to the website? Many people expect everybody starts at the homepage. That's not the case. Many people come
mm,
somewhere to one of your blog posts, to one of your articles, to your about page, etc., and might then inquire more on your website, browse around and see is this, they do the so-called sniff test. Does this smell like it's for me, right? Where the messaging comes in. But then for the
mhm,
conversions, it's also the other equation. It needs to be the right kind of person coming in, because otherwise the messaging doesn't matter, right? If you're selling
mm,
cars and there's somebody coming in for who wants to buy a motorbike, the sniff test isn't not going to work. So the first thing we usually establish is that we try to understand who actually comes to this website. And this is one of the
mm,
main issues clients come to us with, that they say, we get traffic, we get 50, 500, 5,000 people
mm,
coming to our website every day, but hardly anybody converts, hardly anybody reaches out, hardly anybody does something. And then when we analyze that
mm,
traffic, very often, probably 60, 70% of the time, we find that the people that come to your site are not relevant for what you're selling. So people tend to really make a little bit of a fuzzy image around what they do. So they go really broad with their blog, for example. People have learned that Google seems to be ranking blog posts, and that's fair enough. But they then convert their site actually in an online magazine, talking about everything around their industry, right? And forget a little bit what they actually wanted when they built the website in the first place, which was selling an attorney, for example, a consultancy program, or someone else a course or a coaching program or whatever it is, or the products on an e-commerce site.
mm,
So it's one thing that very often ego driven, we want to have like upwards trending statistics and tons of traffic, and I need to have twice the traffic this year than I had last year. Traffic actually doesn't even matter so much. It's really about having those people that really want to come to us and are
mm.
close to ready to maybe take action, or at least the next step, and say, okay, I like this brand, not ready to buy yet, but I want to get some more information from them. If we don't get those people in the first place, the messaging is not going to matter at all.
Yeah, yeah, it's so true. And I think a lot of people have experienced this pain point that you're talking about.
Mhm.
Um, How do people get this wrong? Walk us through some of the biggest glaring errors that you see
Mhm.
people making out there.
Absolutely. One of the main things I have learned to embrace are SOPs in my business, right? So standard
Mm,
operating procedures. We have a team of 30 people right now in the agency. We could not do without defining certain processes. How do we analyze a website? How do we
yeah.
optimize for SEO? How do we create a piece of content, etc.? We're going to talk about this maybe later a little bit more. Those SOPs are great. The problem with a team, and especially when it's a remote team, is that they're going to blindly follow the SOPs.
Mm,
And they're going to have a variable part that's not defined, but then follow the SOPs. And if the process is, or the assignment was to create 2 blog posts per week, they're going to do this, right? What's the problem? You might start out your website with 50 pages about imagine you're an attorney for immigration. You have 50 articles about immigration, legal situation, laws, forms, applications, whatever it is, right? But then you have a team maintain your blog, or you bring an external company in that's supposed to maintain your blog. They're going to start taking steps away from your core business because they are not industry experts.
mhm,
So they say, okay, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not an attorney, but I can talk to immigration. Why do people from Italy go to the United States and live there, right?
mm,
Why is New York the best place to live for immigrants, right? What are the most famous sites in New York? So they start taking steps back from this because it's easier, it's natural. Everybody tries to get the way where they can work most efficiently without too much research, etc. This is what just usually happens. This at scale means that after 2 years, you might suddenly have 200 blog posts that have pretty much nothing to do with your core business.
mm,
So what Google tries to do is to connect the dots. So my children are 10 and 8 right now. They play this game where you connect dot number 1 to dot number 2, now number 3, and then it's a cat. And they say, hey, daddy, I've drawn a cat, right? Perfect. Google tries to do the same thing. So your website, you start out, your website gives them certain dots, and they can roughly say, yeah, this is pretty much looks like it could be a cat, right? But then you follow an SOP for 2 years, putting 500 other dots on the map that have no connection with this first cat shape whatsoever. And Google has
mm,
a really hard time understanding what your website is about. So long story short, one of the main errors we see is that people go too far away from their core business model when they create content, which
mm,
creates a very fuzzy image and is going to make sure that you end up not even ranking well for your core business pages. But you're going to be happy traffic is going up. You see, the more we post on the blog, the more traffic comes in.
mm.
Just that 98% of this traffic is completely irrelevant, is going to leave, is not going to give Google positive signals. So even your core pages that would have given positive signals are going to rank worse.
Mm. So it sounds like, and I would imagine that even, let's pretend that there are multiple topics that somebody is an expert on, that it actually serves their business better to go really deep into a single focused topic to rank for that than it does to, it sounds like, spread yourself too thin across a range of things. Talk to us about folks that are like, well, how do I choose the primary focus?
Mhm. There are definitely strategies, right? One strategy some people go after is just creating different websites. So
Mm,
if I'm an attorney, but I'm also a woodworker and want to sell my woodworking review or wooden plans or whatever, they're so unrelated that I would really suggest making 2 different websites. If I'm an
mm,
attorney working in privacy laws and divorce, maybe 2 different sections on a website are enough. But then
mm.
I also want to have for each of these sections enough content to really back it up. But content
Ah,
not in general, like
yep.
divorce statistics or something like this, or like in very general topics, but really talking to the problems, pain points people are coming to me
Mm.
with. One
So
of the main things,
if you choose a topic, I'm hearing you say go deep into that topic.
exactly, if you have two
Yeah.
topics, go deep into 2 topics, correct.
Mhm, mhm,
And the reason is really because Google connects the dots not only on one article, but across the website. So we need to make sure that similar pieces, related pieces of content link to each other. A link is like this connection, this connecting the dots for Google is made with a link. The internet is based on links, right? So this is how Google establishes that this article number A, article A is related to article B, right? So suddenly article A comes up for some B terms and article B comes up for some A terms on Google because they just established the context. And this is how Google learns. They try to understand what's happening, and Google tries to make us believe they're so smart they can just figure everything out. They can't.
Yeah.
Right? They just want us to pay for advertising right away and not even try it with SEO. It's in their best interest. Everybody acts in their interest. They definitely have a strong interest in making people believe ads and spending money on ads is the only way.
Yeah. So I'm hearing you point out a couple things that folks can do differently when it comes to creating content. Is there anything else on that list about, when you sit down to either choose a topic or create content, how you should be doing it differently, either than the marketplace or than the way that you've been doing it, if that hasn't been working?
It's definitely the content creation process per se. So how you come up with the topics, and it should not be an external agency necessarily that can suggest topics, but it should be you because you know your business best. As a business owner, you should be making this selection. And you also want to make sure that you focus on user experience on those articles, on content design. So these are two topics nobody thinks about when it comes to writing. Right. So one is user experience. It's really about this moment where you come in and say, okay, I have a first impression of this site, and I want to make sure I know. I give them an impression that I can actually answer what people come for. Right. Sometimes this requires a redesign because people might not transmit this serious image or trustworthy image with the design. And this is where custom design very often comes in. Right? And people form this image within milliseconds.
Right.
This is not even before they read the messaging. And this is really interesting. This was hard for me to learn. I come from a technical background. I'm like, yeah, these are facts and these are words and these are on the page. There's a lot of emotion in there, right? And I might swipe back even before I read the headline just because I don't like the site. My brain just suggests this is not the site I was looking for. So this user experience really starts there, but it also starts is present where we think, how do people go through the text? Nobody reads from top to bottom anymore. But what we mostly see is a headline, maybe a video, and a long wall of text, right? Whereas we have for our clients a specific structure developed where we say, what are the key takeaways? Put in a table of contents. Wikipedia knew this 20 years ago that the table of contents was a good idea. Everybody loves being able to jump to a section they are interested in, but nobody does it on their website, right? And we all know that on the mobile phone, it's really not fun to scroll through a wall of text. It's much better if it's visual, if there are images, if there are lists, there are tables, bold highlighting. Right. So there's a series of things that you can do to just make this a user-friendly piece. And what we need to understand about SEO is that the only thing Google really wants is to make this search user happy. When they come to your website, they want them to have a good experience. And if you don't do your part in order to improve this experience as much as possible, they're going to swipe back and click on a different result on Google. And this sends exactly the wrong signal. So we want to make sure that we really, as much as possible, embody the search user that comes to the page and say, okay, what's probably going on in their head when they have typed in this search, clicked on my search result, what's going on in their head? What do they want next? Sometimes this is adding more value. Can I add like a video version of this? Can I add an infographic? Can I add a PDF checklist? Anything that brings more value to them, where they say, okay, this is really what I was looking for, is going to add to this. And then this would really be all about user experience. And then content design for me is really, how do I structure the text, right? For me, every single line on an article should kind of compel the reader to read the next one. Because if I'm too boring at the beginning, or I don't suggest what this is going to be about, people are just going to jump away again. They're not going to give me a chance.
Yeah. Well, it's so true. I mean, even your point around, right, even before you've read something or even consumed the content, your brain might suggest that this was not the site you were looking for. It is so fascinating that we are making those decisions within seconds. I remember just the other day speaking to my sister, and I was talking to her about a concept that I thought would really be relevant for her. And I sent her to a website, right? I
Mhm.
know the owner of the website, they're a friend of mine, right? And she showed up to the website and she was like, I don't like this website, right? Within
Yeah.
seconds of clicking on it.
Mhm.
I know she hadn't read anything.
Absolutely.
She was like, I don't like this website. This doesn't work for me.
Mhm.
And, and I had to kind of talk to her like, oh, yeah, I see that. I know, but the content is good. Like, I'll tell you specifically what I'm directing you to. And when you think about that, like, it's absolutely not the experience you want people to have when they hit your website.
Yeah. A friend of mine is an architect, and he
Mm.
told me a concept years ago where he says, when you enter a room, you're going to know within milliseconds if you like the room, if you feel comfortable or not. And it's like the sum of hundreds or even thousands of details you're perceiving. This might
Yes.
be the temperature, might be the decoration, might be if it's tidy or
The
really stuffed with
lighting.
things, the lighting, the
Yep.
design, etc. So you perceive all those things, and on a website, the exact same thing happens. So you,
Mm.
you obviously can't design the ideal website for everybody, but there are a lot of usability things we can do in order to make sure that the vast majority of people are going to find their way around. And finding information easily is one of the main key points Google wants you to focus on. They want to make sure that Google users come into your website, find what they're looking for easily.
Mm. Well, and I like your points above about even things that people might not think about now, but seem kind of obvious when you think, first of all, from the standpoint of pretty much everybody that accesses digital devices these days, how much we are just on information overload,
Mhm.
right? And this point of being able to make that journey easier, faster, happier, all of those things matter so much in being able to get people to stick. So, table of contents, I heard you say, up above, adding more value with videos, infographics, PDF checklists, really considering the content design, how you're structuring the text.
Mhm.
Can we talk a little bit more about that text piece, right? And
Yeah.
particularly, I think of the folks that I serve, they're experts, right? They're
Mhm.
coaches, consultants, online educators. They pretty much all live in the expert space, professionals that come over, from their quote unquote traditional profession and branch
Mhm.
out into the online space to create more content, educate more people, serve in a bigger way. They have a lot to say. They have a lot that they're experts on, right?
Mhm.
Um, what are kind of your high level tips for thinking about structuring text? And I love this idea about like, think of every single line, the job of that line is to compel
Mhm.
somebody to read the next line, right?
Yeah.
Are there other things that we should be thinking about visually, about, you know, 200 words is too few, 1400 words is too
Mhm.
many, what are the guidelines?
Yeah, what I like to do is I like to suggest people just use Google a little bit more. So we use Google
Mm,
to research, but we don't use it to prepare our content pieces because we already know everything about this subject matter, right? But we don't know how it should be presented. So I've been doing SEO for 20 years. I don't know how a particular article should be presented, and Google is going to tell me. So if I want to rank for SEO agency in Spain, the best thing I can do is type this into Google and see what comes up, because what comes up is what Google thinks their users want to see.
ah,
So I can then really go through the top 10, top 20, at least the top five, right? Go through them, read them, make some notes if you want, and say, look, yeah, it seems like everything ranking on the top has a video. This is a hint, right?
yeah,
Seems like everybody has like a list of the top three things. If I don't have a list, there is a clear gap between what Google wants and what I have on the page. So if I'm really,
mhm,
really strong authority in this space and recognized authority on the internet, it might still fit in. But usually we really try to fit in with the way we present it. We shouldn't copy from others, but we should fit in the way Google apparently suggests that this should be done. There are search queries that are always going to be triggering listicles, top 10, top 5, best
right.
5, first 5, etc. If I write an essay about this of 2,000 words, it's not fitting in. At the same time,
Mm,
sometimes we try to answer something very complex in a huge article. I see
Yep.
people trying to get in with 5,000 words. They're really proud. They had the writer blocked for 2 weeks to put this piece of content together just to make it rank. And it might have worked a few years ago, but today Google wants to meet what they call the search intent. So this is the reason why somebody typed in a search. So once we meet the search intent, a user is going to be happy. And if I type in the height of the Eiffel Tower, a 5,000 word piece about the Eiffel Tower's history and materials used and whatnot is not going to make me happy, right? An unformatted table showing me the height is going to do it. So we really need to adjust specifically the length, but also the content design to what apparently it is that Google is looking for. And this is what shifts. And this is where we very often with the ongoing consulting program then come in and say, look, we know 6 months ago this was working what you have on your site, but now we see a shift in trends. And this 5,000 words piece was working really well 2 years ago, but now it's 1,000 or 1,500 words pieces with an infographic that seem to be the thing. So maybe let's go back to this article and break it up, summarize it in a shorter version, illustrate it better, and then we have something that can compete. But this really requires that you have someone watching out for your competitive landscape on Google, because ultimately it's your potential clients that are going to come in, and they're not going to come in like on social media when they're not necessarily ready. They're going to come in when they have set aside a few minutes of time, go to Google, type something in, and want to actually find someone like you. Yeah. And this just has so much potential that it's really important to dedicate some consistent time to this.
Well, it's so important. I love your point around like the rules have changed because I should say I love your point because it's an important one. I don't love it because I think so many people want to set it and forget it, right? They want to like do something one time or choose a strategy and stick with it. And I know not very long ago, at least what I was hearing around creating content that ranked on Google is, I can't remember the term, like creating silos, right? Really deep and tall and wide into a topic, right? So that you could rank. But what I'm hearing you say is that's not necessarily it now, right?
Silos still work. So silo is essentially just a list of very closely related articles, right? So if I want to rank for the term email marketing, I would have an article about subject lines. I would have probably 10 articles about subject lines from different angles. I would talk about the copy. I would have articles on copywriting, on email systems. I would just really shed a light on this topic from all kinds of angles, relate those articles in a strategic way. This is still a good idea. Why? Because just because I have one piece of content around something doesn't really translate to Google what's called topical authority. Whereas, okay, I'm just known for this topic. I have so much stuff about this topic on my site that I have a certain relevance. So there's a Google patent really addressing this specifically, that Google really gives some value to this. So this still works. But it's definitely a moving target. So how you present content and what is valuable content that Google actually wants to rank differs all the time. And then there is another piece that's about link building. So Google likes to rank pieces of content that others have endorsed. So imagine you have a really good checklist about how to prepare for a podcast, for example, and then you have this checklist, everybody likes this checklist, people link to it. Google is going to feel that the internet essentially is backing you up. Like if you go to a town and you ask for the best plumber and everybody sitting in the bar gives you the same name, it's more trustworthy, right? Than if you just pick one from the stickers on I don't know where, right, on the wall.
It's so true. Like one day, not too long ago, I went to Facebook and, I don't have a massive number of friends, but I asked a single question around who do you recommend as a chiropractor in Seattle, right? And I got all these names, but I got 3 hits. 3 people all said the same name, right? What do you think I did?
This has value. It has value, and especially, but what's really important here is the relevance. So if those are people that have been using this person before, or have been working with them before, or know about their industry and they back them up, it has more value. And on the internet, the same thing happens. So if the local pharmacy, a local drugstore sends a link to SEOleverage.com, it's not going to have value because it's not relevant. So Google doesn't trust an irrelevant vote, so to speak. But if those are
Mm,
marketing companies or podcasters or online marketers, coaches, e-commerce sites, this is closely related to what we do. So this is going to have more value. So we want links from other websites into our site, into our content, but we want them with a relevant background.
awesome. Yeah, that's a super important tip. Um, okay, so you've already given us, I mean, a list really of some great things that we can do to be more thoughtful in the way that we choose and create our
Mhm.
content and our topics. How we create things that Google actually wants to rank and wants to
Mhm.
use, right? And I think that's super important. What else? Is there anything else that you feel like people regularly miss the boat on or should be thinking about?
It's definitely around the conversion, a strong focus on conversions, and this is just
Mm,
really tough when you have a lot of things going on to
mm,
really focus go so deep. So you might have an overall idea how many people come to your website. You might even know how many come from a social background, social media, for example, social media platforms. But you really want to make sure that you know what kind of traffic actually is so relevant that they would really be great to talk to, right?
mm,
So this is where you really want to get some help in most cases to set this up correctly, to actually catch the data and not lose it. We have people coming to us that might be already at a 7-figure stage,
mm,
but they still haven't figured out how to measure traffic properly. So one of the first things we do with them is that we just set this up correctly and say, okay, let's find out how many of 100 people coming to your website actually check you out a little bit more or download something or get in contact with you or check out your about page, where get a feeling for it, because most sites get irrelevant traffic, tons of it, right? So once you have set this up, we have internally developed for our clients a platform so they can log in, and we just fetch from all the things Google Analytics gives you, which is the standard tool to analyze websites here. From all those details, which are a little bit overwhelming, we capture
mm.
like 4,
Yeah.
but we present them in a way where you can see, okay, over month after month, what's in red, what's in green, what's going up, what's going down. And we really try to focus on the things that matter, because there are probably 200 things you could be doing for SEO. Everything would be good for SEO. Your assistant is going to confirm this is good for SEO, so let's do this. But there might only be 4 that matter in the next 2 or 4 weeks. So what we do is
Mm,
every couple of weeks, we line those 4 up and say, look, this is the situation. This is what your competitors are doing. This is what we feel has the highest impact in the next 2 weeks, 3, 4 tasks, and then do the same thing again. Because we see people telling me, yeah, the website is optimized, and they were just filling in some form fields on a plugin in WordPress, and they think this is the optimization that's necessary, and then they ask me why they're not getting results. So SEO is much more. It was much easier in the past. This is another thing. So people might have had really good success just by blogging about whatever they wanted 8 years ago, 10 years ago, because there was no competition back then.
mhm.
Whatever you had was slightly related to what you had on your website, gave you tons of traffic, and it was actually so much traffic that the small fraction that was relevant gave you possibly a 7-figure business. So we
Right.
have today people coming to us and say, look, I was number one. I was the first person blogging about this. I was number one in this niche. I made millions here 8 years ago, and now nobody even gives me a call. And the reason is because all this content from back then needs to be refreshed, recycled,
Mm,
optimized, presented in a different way. So what was working 8 years ago has no relevance for today. We can't go back and say, I want this situation again, because the entire world has changed multiple times in the meantime. So we have
yeah.
a lot of people who want to go back, and we need to really educate them and say, look, today is a different situation. Let's audit what we still can use and leverage from everything that's in there. And there's a lot of work in there. We literally had someone trash 800 different blog posts written over 9 years because they had no relevance anymore. And it's really a hard pill to swallow, a tough pill to swallow, really, because it's just so much work going into this. But if it's not relevant, you can't expect the results anymore. And Google doesn't care that you were one of the first 8 years ago. They care about the user experience of a search user today who wants to find out the height of the Eiffel Tower.
Yeah, absolutely. We got to kill those sacred cows, right? People think, oh, I put all this work into whatever it was. Well, and you make a couple of important points there. One about, I think, the state of overwhelm that a lot of, particularly small businesses, consultancies, small groups of professionals or whatever, feel around what do we measure? How do we look at the right things? How do we interpret Google Analytics or any other analytics program that isn't filtered through something that simplifies it and summarizes it for us, right?
Right.
And then this concept around content needs to be refreshed, recycled, and updated. We cannot rely on content that we built years ago. We just can't. For the folks that think, because I think a lot of people are in a position, particularly in the small business world, where they think like, okay, do I only invest in this kind of support if I'm also running ads and driving traffic beyond basic Google searches, right? Like at what level, and I have no idea, what the investment is like to work with somebody like yourself, but where do people start? If you're talking to somebody that's like, they need help, that probably a little bit of SEO support would help them go a long way. Where do you start with them?
There are different levels. This is an excellent question. There are different levels. So very often we start people off with what we call a quick audit. And this is something, by the way, I would really love to give away to your listeners. There's a $100 product on our website. People usually buy this, but I'm happy to give this away because it just helps people so much. It's the first assessment we do on their website. I get personally on a call with everybody, and we check out their website on a screen share and say, look, this is the situation. This is how I think people are going to behave on this website when they come from search. This is what you rank for, etc. So this gives people a really, really good idea about where to start. And from there, we have different people at different levels. We work with small car repair shops, and we work with 8-figure international corporations because the strategies overall are the same. Right? We just break them down and really try to get a good understanding about the individual business and their needs, and then adapt our toolkit and our team to what a particular business needs. And some businesses, for example, come to us and say, let's set me up for success because I want to get into this SEO game. I want to make sure that we start leveraging this. I can't be committing resources on an ongoing basis, but set me up for success. And we might be doing a 3-4 month workshop. Make sure their team understand how this works. We get their site fixed, do the most important things, help them define a content creation process and the topic selection process that makes sense. And maybe they check in with us a few months later and say, can you do another assessment? Let's see where we are, etc. And then we have people where we work with their teams actually, and they might have a couple of VAs. I train them on a Zoom call so they know how this works. And we just on a regular basis, we have our platform connected on a regular basis. We give them like leading tasks, I would say, right? Where we say, look, if you have free capacities, work on other things, but we want you to do these 3-4 things in the next couple of weeks. And then 2 weeks later, we line the next things up. Like similar to a personal trainer at the gym that says, yeah, do these reps and don't eat chocolate. We do a similar thing and say, look, you do your bike riding, etc. That's fine, but I want you to lift X amount of weight and do so many reps, just to make sure that, because I know that this is going to help you move forward. Yeah. SEO is a long game. This is not an instant result. It's a long game. We need to definitely invest consistently in. So it's not something you can just get set up for success here in a month or two and then forget about it. If you commit to SEO, we can definitely already do something with small businesses in a one-time fashion and like a one-time project. Ideally, you have someone either in your team or an external agency you really trust, not easy to find, an external agency you really trust to look after you a little bit, right? Because we just have the tools. We pay thousands of dollars in tools and analysis work and trainings and courses, etc., to stay up to date in this moving industry, fast-moving industry, and it's not easy to keep up with that, right? Totally. So once you are at a position where you can say, okay, part of the marketing budget we can dedicate to SEO to just maintain an organic pillar without paying for every click and being at the mercy of Facebook's ad costs in the last quarter of the year and things like those. It's always a fun time for people investing in ads. It's definitely worth it. You're
Mhm.
going to get the best results. So even if you still continue to run ads, most of our clients eventually add ads to their channels.
Mm.
Many start out with SEO, but eventually I think it's a good idea to be present on multiple platforms and also
Yeah.
leverage ads where it makes sense. But you ultimately get a lower cost per acquisition, a cost per lead, because you just average it out with the paid channels and the essentially free organic channel and get a lower cost per acquisition for a new client, which ultimately helps you scale with a lower budget.
Well, and you've done the foundational work, if you're working with somebody like yourself or a company, like yours, to make sure that the content is right, that you have something that will convert or do its job. Whereas I think a lot of people can waste money throwing money at ad spend and not having fixed the underlying problem to begin with.
Absolutely, and you
Right.
can also waste money with SEO, right? If you
Mm.
work on the wrong things that have zero impact. I had a client today literally tell me they went through 200 images and updated their text, etc., which is not a fun task to do. It's a frustrating task for an assistant to work on. Probably cost a few $100s to get this done. In their particular situation, in their particular industry, this was the worst use of their time.
Right.
On a different website, different industry, this would have been something I would have suggested. But it's really hard if you're not if this is not your industry, you're making a lot of decisions that are going to have a negative impact. You're not never going to know. You're never going to have the tools to measure if this was a good idea. You're never going to know if there was something you're missing.
Yes.
The opportunity costs, because in this time this person could have optimized 4 articles that could have driven more conversions to your site. So all these things, you really don't know them, right? So you make some decisions because of some article you have read, which seems to be a good idea, but everything is like standard operating procedure across all the industries, and this is never a good idea to follow.
No, and your point about the opportunity cost and basically the blind leading the blind, right?
Mhm.
Around like, go do this strategy. It's just so important that if we are committing to learning SEO, improving our SEO, that we get the laser focus and advice of somebody who
Mhm.
knows what they're doing, so that when we are putting effort into that area, we're doing it in the right way, in the right order. And it just, I think that the importance of that just can't be overstated. Stop
Mhm.
wasting time, get the right support for a complex area so that you're doing a strategy that's ultimately going to result in some wins long term.
Exactly. And
Huge.
also even picking your battles well. So sometimes we get people who are selling iPhone cases, they want to rank whenever somebody types in iPhone, right? It's not going to happen
No.
anywhere near, right? But they keep adding money, throwing money at it, keep investing, and it's not happening. They get frustrated after 2 years. They say, look, SEO doesn't work. It does work. You're just picking the wrong battle. I'm not going to run a marathon tomorrow without preparation, right?
Mm,
So if I start, I'm going to get frustrated after a few kilometers probably,
mm,
right? So I need to prepare for things and see what is the right thing to do at the stage I'm at.
mm.
So I'm not asking for too much. And you can get a very long way with the right strategies, even at a very initial stage, just being consistently working on the right things.
Yeah, I love that. Sounds like you've got experience working across industries, right?
Mhm.
With a variety of sizes of business. You said that you've got products and supports that will help a really small business,
Mhm.
right? That has a limited budget versus those who are more established. They've got a bigger marketing budget.
Mhm.
They know SEO is important and they can prioritize it.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah. Well, folks, you've heard it here. If you're not already running to do Garrett's quick audit, you're crazy. I can't believe he's offering a one-on-one service for free. I'm going to sign myself up for that. I have more to learn in this area, and
Mhm.
it's one of those things that for many of us, we don't need 2,000 new clients, right? Like we might just need a couple dozen in a year. And
Mhm.
so, I think that a small bit of effort probably goes a long way in this regard, and particularly when we're doing the right strategies. Garrett, where do you like to send people? Where do you like to connect
Mhm.
online?
Awesome. So the ideally people just head over to SEOleverage.com.
Mhm.
There's a quick audit button. We're going to make sure that you on your website have a coupon code people can use to get this for free. Another option is just sending me an email, gert@seoleverage.com, gert@seoleverage.com. Drop me a line, tell me you come from this podcast, and I'm going to make sure you get the coupon code. And then it's just getting an assessment and get a first idea, right? I was at the gym the other day, got an assessment from a personal trainer, and I said, look, this is good, this is bad, more bad than good, so I need to do something about it. But at least you know where you are, right? And you know what is it actually that separates you from being able to compete with some people that come up on Google all the time. And just say, okay, this is the roadmap. This can be faster or take a little bit longer, but at least you know this is the roadmap, and there are going to be certain things you can do today, and there are going to be certain things that are going to take a few months of consistent effort from an agency, from yourself, from both in combination. But at least you're heading in the right direction.
I love that. Well, I'm so grateful. That's such a generous offer. Huge thank you to you for being here today, sharing all of your expertise and then making a generous offer like that. So folks, if you're listening, hop over to legalwebsitewarrior.com/podcast. We are going to share all of Gert's contact information, the coupon code to be able to get that free $100 assessment. Just go get it done. It's a new year. You need to layer on some new strategies in your business. It's time. Gert, what final takeaway or advice would you like to leave our listeners with today?
Focus on conversions, not traffic, and make sure you have the data to make this decision.
It's huge. Yep. Don't waste your time. Gert, thank you. I really appreciate you. I really look forward to being in touch.
Thank you very much, Heather. It was a pleasure to talk.